Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 338. Do not save what is left after spending, but spend what is left after saving. Warren Buffett.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome, my Indie Film Hustlers, to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Today's show is sponsored by ShotLister. Paper shot lists suck, and when something inevitably goes wrong on set, you're left to scribble all over your perfect plan. But with ShotLister, you can schedule your film shot by shot and minute by minute. Then on set, just update your shot list, and ShotLister automatically does the math so you know exactly what you're doing. Check out shotlister.com, which is available on macOS, iOS, and Android. And as a special bonus, ShotLister is giving away 50 free downloads every month. Just email indiefilmhustle@shotlister.com for your free copy. The show is also sponsored by my new book, Rise of the Filmtrepreneur: How to Turn Your Independent Film into a Money-Making Business. In it, I discuss how to actually create the filmtrepreneur model and how to make money with your film or films and do it again and again so you can actually build a successful career and business. So if you want to pre-order the book, head over to filmbizbook.com. That's filmbizbook.com. And if you haven't already, please sign up for my new podcast, the Filmtrepreneur Podcast. Just head over to filmtrepreneur.com or filmmakingbusiness.com is a quick little hack to get there. And there where you'll get a ton of new information about how to become a filmtrepreneur, how to become an entrepreneurial filmmaker and make a living with your films. So definitely check that out. Now, guys, today on the show, we have a guest that has done something that many filmmakers, film students out there wish they could do. Pay off their student loans. Today's guest is Hari Khalsa. Now, Hari reached out to me and wanted me to publish an article that he had written about how he was able to pay off $30,000 in student loans in less than 11 months. And I told him, not only will I post the article, but you need to come on the show and we need to talk about this because it is such a huge problem. Not as in only a huge problem in the entire country, in the entire world. Student debt is bigger than credit card debt at this point. But we wanted to focus on filmmakers because that's what we hear. We're on a filmmaking podcast. So I wanted to talk to Hari about how he did it, what steps he took to do it, how he did it so quickly, and the mindset and the habits and the techniques and skill sets that you need to do to not only pay off your student loans, but how you're able to build a business, how you're able to create revenue fresh out of school, and how he was already starting to lay down the groundwork on how to be able to make money out of school. And by the way, he did not do this perfectly. He deferred his payments for over a year. And when he finally had to make payments, he sat down and did the math, and it was going to take him about 10 years to pay everything off. And he was going to pay obscene amounts of interest, and it didn't make any sense to him. So he decided to take control of his future. And that's what this is. That's why this episode is so important. Every time you borrow money, you're basically robbing from your future self. That's what the whole industry is built on. The banks and the credit cards and the loan companies, they want you on the hook for as much as they can get you for and to keep you on that hook for as long as they can, because every month that goes by that you don't pay that student loan back, they're making dollars. And that's all they care about. They don't care about you. They don't care about your future, your family's future, that if you ever pay it off, if it was up to them, you would be paying them a monthly payment for the rest of your life. So it's your time right now as you're listening to this. It's time for you to take control of your financial future. And as soon as you take control of your financial future, you take control of your future. I know a lot of you out there have tried to produce or direct an independent film and try to self-finance it. But I hate to tell you that if you've got a $500 or $1,000 student loan payment, it's going to be real tough to save money to build out that micro budget feature film that you've been dying to do, or even that short film. You've got to take control of your finances. And trust me, I'm a creative. I don't like dealing with numbers. I don't like dealing with accounting. But if you don't take control of this, it will eat you alive. All right? I'm telling you. So Haib really comes in and just drops golden nugget after golden nugget after golden nugget on how he was able to do this in 11 months. Okay? And he's going to teach you the entire blueprint on how he did it. So without any further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Hari Khalsa. I'd like to welcome to the show Hari Khalsa, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show, brother.
Thanks for having me, Alex. Appreciate it.
Man, you reached out to me about something that's so important and something that nobody talks about ever. So you wanted me to publish an article that you wrote, and when I read the article, I was like, well, no. You've got to come on the show. We need to have a conversation about this. And we're going to talk about the dark secret that nobody wants to talk about in the film industry. Is film school student debt.
Don't say it. Don't say it, Alex.
It's just horrendous. It is a rampant problem, not only in this business, but throughout the, higher education is ridiculous in the US, and these kids are coming out of college with basically mortgages, just full-blown mortgages on top of their heads that they'll never pay off. They can never bankrupt their way out of it. They can never get rid of it. It's basically an anchor around their neck for the rest of their lives. And in the film business, I would say that if you have, and I've spoken to these filmmakers I got $120,000 in debt. And I'm like, dude, you're not going to be able to make anything remotely close to being able to pay that off for probably about 15 years, 10 to 15 years, because it's going to take you about 4 or 5 years of hustling and grinding just to start trying to make a living, let alone paying $1,000 or $2,000 a month in student loans. So you have this amazing story because you paid off $30,000 in your film school loans within 11 months. I need to talk to you about this. So before we get into how you did it, your tips, your tricks, how all of this goes down, I have to ask you the most important question. Was film school worth it?
Yeah, that's the question, huh? I get that one a lot.
Yeah.
For me, film school was worth it.
Okay.
And mainly it was because of the experience on set with other students that I got. Mm-hmm. And the camaraderie and that working together on film sets, mm-hmm. And those connections that I made with people like me, that was worth it. And also, I mean, it was the most fun I've ever had in my life. Like 4 years of film school was just a blast. So in that way, it was worth it. But if I was paying off my student loans for 20 years, like ask me that 15 years into paying off my student loans, it might be a different answer.
Now, could you have gotten that experience without going to school? Could you have interned on those projects? Like if you would have just called up the directors or the students in the school and go, hey, I want to work for free. Do you think they would have had a problem putting you on set?
No. Yeah. Good point. Although I think I might not have tried to do that though. Mm-hmm. Being in the culture of film school, if you're that type of personality that can take advantage of what it has to offer, mm-hmm. You could do all those things, but would you? And so being putting yourself into a program that has sure. expectations, mm-hmm. I think probably might make it more likely, unless you're a very entrepreneurial minded type person that's just going to go for it and make their own opportunities like that to get on those student film sets. I think, yeah.
No, yeah, without question. And also, your student loan is on the lower side. I mean, 30. I mean, don't get me wrong, $30,000 is a lot of money, but comparatively to 50, 60, 70, 80,
So
100,000.
I should be clear, like it was more money, but my parents took a chunk of it.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. Fair enough.
So personally, I had 30 grand, and then my parents probably had an additional 30 grand.
So was this okay? So I was going to say, what school did you go to that only cost 30 grand? Because when I graduated in the mid 90s, it was, I think I walked out with like 18 to 20,000 in debt for my whole degree. And at that price point,
things have changed.
Things have changed a bit since 95, 96 when I graduated or so. So your loan amount was 30,000, right? That was your own personal loan that you were dealing with. How did you get started making money in the business? I mean, you're a fresh film school grad. So what was the first process of just starting to I need to make some cash?
So I started working in film school.
Smart.
There was a nonprofit organization that is like a nonprofit media company, which is kind of unusual, but so they produce a lot of video content. And I got plugged in with them and started making videos for them, just for like minimum wage style. And so I did that. And then I just kept that client after film school and just kind of upped the amount of work that I was doing with them. So that's how I got started.
And then, because I did the same thing. I was hustling when I was in college, and I was just like, oh yeah, I'm going to work here. I'm going to do that. I'm working on set here. And I was PAing. I would skip school because I would have a gig. I'm assuming you might have done a couple of those yourself.
Yeah. I think sometimes I would prioritize the cash for sure. Yeah.
I mean, and the experience too, that kind of real world experience is nothing to laugh at. So then when you get out of school, and you're sitting there with this mountain of $30,000 to have to pay back, what made you decide to tackle it with such vigor? Because, I mean, how many film school grads are there every month coming out into the business, and most of them have $30,000, $50,000, $100,000, but they don't prioritize to get rid of that debt. They just I'll just pay the interest. I'll just pay the interest off for the next 2-3 years. So by the end of if you have a $30,000 loan, by the end of it, you're spending $60,000 if you're lucky. Yeah. I mean, it's insane. So what made you different? What made you think differently about it?
So I didn't at first. So I was not ashamed to admit it now. I didn't know how much debt I was going into in film school. You graduate high school when you're 18, you're a baby. Your brain isn't even developed at that point. You're just a baby. And yeah. And then you're expected to go to college, and you're just I'm going to get into a good school. A lot of people, best school I can get into, and whatever it costs, right? You're not thinking about the money at that point. So
it's the dream. Even know. It's the dream. It's the sizzle, not the steak, baby.
Yeah. And so when I graduated, I was not thinking about my debt. I deferred my loans for a year. What a lot of people do. You just defer it, right? And it actually wasn't. I actually went into more debt right after I graduated college. I was like, all right, I need to do more work, so I got to buy some equipment. So I got a $10,000 loan from a friend, and nice friend, super.
I was about to say, good friend.
Shout out to my friend, and he gave me that money, and it was super low interest, and I bought a bunch of equipment. I bought a $3,000 light kit, which I realize now I did not need that at all. That was a terrible purchase. And I did that, and then it wasn't until 3 years later that I realized that I did the math on how much interest I was going to have to pay on these student loans, and it was just absurd how much more money I was going to have to pay in interest. And at that same time, I got onto Dave Ramsey. This guy, he's a financial dude. And you start listening to Dave Ramsey podcast, and you start getting fired up, and you start learning a lot about why you should pay off your debt quickly and how that's going to like make you be able to make much more money in the long term if you take care of those that debt. And I just imagined like what freedom I would have if I didn't have high monthly bills to pay and how I might make different decisions if I wasn't trying to make a high student loan payment.
What was the student loan payment, just out of curiosity?
So I deferred up until then. And that was another thing. Like I deferred up until I could. And then when I started realizing I was going to have to start paying this thing, that's when I looked at, I think it was like, it wasn't horrible, but it was like somewhere between $300 and $500 a month.
All right. So let's say it's $300 to $500 a month. How many years would it have taken you to pay it off?
I think it was like over 10 still.
Jesus, my God.
I feel like the math on that might be a little off, but it was too much.
It was more than a few years. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's insane. So basically it's like almost a 30-year mortgage.
Right.
Almost something like that. So that's what made you get off your butt and say, you know what, I gotta get rid of this. This is gonna kill me. And how old are you again?
26.
So you're a young dude, man. So you shouldn't be walking around with $30,000 on your head, you know, for something that it's intangible at this point. It's like education. Like that's basically what you had. So hopefully,
yeah, but it's education, but it's not even like it's film education. So like the dollar worth on a film degree is very low.
Yeah, the ROI it's a bit rough. It's a bit rough on the ROI on the film, because I mean, and look, I know a lot of people love film school, and I went to film school. I enjoyed my film school tremendously. I loved my friends. I loved the camaraderie, you know, going on sets and access I got to gear and all that kind of stuff. And I also got in at a very affordable rate. But if you would have told me that same education would have cost me $60,000, it's just not good ROI. It just doesn't make any sense. I would have rather taken a handful of workshops or educated myself online with the basics and hustled everything else, you know, and learned it on the job. And that's kind of where, before film schools, that's what was done. Like you just learned while you did it. So, but the loan situation it's insane, dude. It's insane. So first, how did you pay off your debt within a year, man? What are your tips and tricks? What's the secret sauce, man?
So, I mean, it's basic to understand, but difficult to implement.
Right.
And like Dave Ramsey talks about, financial habits are like 20% knowledge and 80% habit. Mm-hmm. It's like the habits that are the problem. And so, you know, I mean, it's a basic of equation is like how much profit can you make? How much money can you make? And how low can you get your expenses so that you can have the maximum amount of money per month to throw at your student loans? So that's what I started thinking about. And I set unrealistic goals for myself. That's like an important thing for me is like pick something you think you can achieve and then like pick something a step above that. And then also tell everyone that you know, so you can't get away with not doing it.
Oh, social pressure. Ooh, that's a good motivator.
Yeah.
So what were some of the things you did? Like, what were those habits? What were those like specific habits that you did to kind of start breaking out? Because $30,000 is a lot of money to pay off within 11 months. So you must have done a few things. Like, how was your overhead? Yeah.
So I've always been like a pretty cheap liver. Like I try to like stay in a place where the rent is low, like comfortable enough so you're not like living in squalor. Of course, like no one should do that, but like, you know, not too high. And then, you know, cut your grocery budget, like try to like spend as little as possible while still getting the nutrition that you need, of course, on groceries. You know, limit how much you go out to movies, limit how much you spend on drinks and entertainment, and just try to cut all of that down. And one of the most important things is just making a budget. So like just make a budget about like where you're going to put your money. So like this much money is going into rent, this much money is going into entertainment, and you have it in all those categories. And what I did at first is actually an envelope system. So you take out the money and cash at the beginning of a month, and you separate it into envelopes categorized by your different expenses. and then you only spend cash on those things. So you don't have the debit card or the credit card as like a thing that you can then use to go over so you just limit yourself to the cash that's in that envelope.
And so you kept step number one, keep the overhead as low as humanly possible. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. Which is something I preach constantly, even when making a movie. Don't make a movie for $500,000 if you can make it for $100,000.
Yeah.
I mean, why do that to yourself? So you keep the overhead extremely low. What were if you don't mind me asking, what were your monthly expenses? And then how much was coming in versus how much you had to spend it?
So it was,
give or take.
It was it was about $2,000 was my monthly expenses.
Okay. That's good. That's a studio apartment and I'm assuming you have a car.
I mean, not in LA.
No. Obviously not in LA.
Yeah, 2,000 would be barely enough for rent, I'm sure, a year.
You depends on where, dude. $2,000 is not going to get you there. Well, that's the other thing too. Like that's a very good point. If you live in a city like LA or New York or San Francisco or one of these big cities, try to find a city outside the city that you can move to where all the expenses are dropped down, where if you have to commute to go in there, or just try to build something out, even if it's for the short term in that city, so you can keep that overhead low, continue to make money. And because it's you have a $30,000 debt, you've got $2,500 in rent alone, let alone food and all the other stuff. So your expenses will go off the roof. And that's a mistake a lot of filmmakers make right out of school. They're like, oh, I got to move to LA. I'm like, dude, are you ready? By the way, it took me, it took me like 20 years to move out to LA. Like I was forever to come out here because I was scared, but that's another question altogether. But I came out when I was ready, it's very, very helpful. All right, so you're paying cash, which is because that's a tip that everyone listening should understand is when you pay something cash, it hurts a lot more than it does when you just swipe that little card or you insert that little chip. Am I right?
Yeah, it really does. I mean, it's like a real just psychological thing that like you're actually giving something up. Like you have money and then it goes from your hand to their hand and you've lost something. So but when you just swipe a card, you take that card and you put it back in your wallet. So there isn't that psychological thing where you've actually spent that money. And even worse is credit cards, right?
Oh.
Like debit card is coming from your bank, but if it's a credit card, then it's just fake money. You're playing with Monopoly money until you're not, right? and so stop using the credit cards. Like that's another thing I did. That was like biggest thing is just you got to stop accruing debt if you're going to pay off debt.
Mm-hmm. Which is, and a lot of people, when they come out of school, they have no personal finance knowledge or education. So and what's on every college campus anywhere in the United States, that table where they're going to give you the free cooler if you sign up for the credit card, or you get the free T-shirt or the free something,
sure.
and they give you it's 0%
bonus miles,
and you get zero. It's zero financing. Don't worry about it. It's no interest for 12 months. And then after those 12 months, it turns into 24% interest or something like that.
When I was in college, I was like, wait, explain interest to me? I don't even know what the concept of interest, You don't know anything. You're a baby. You
know what's sad, man, is that they teach all these things in school, but they don't teach the things you really need to know, like personal finance, like how to have relationships with people, professional, personal, things that like real health. Like, just basic health and eating concepts, and like, what's a fat, what's not a fat, all these things. They don't teach any of that. They teach basket weaving. I don't, and let alone film school. Jesus Christ. But so, I'll tell you what I did when I was, you're so farther along than I was when I was a mess at 26, dude. I had to almost go I was about a year away from almost going bankrupt when I was 26. And when I was 22, I got a credit card and I got like $15,000 in credit line. And I'm like, I'm rolling. Just make it rain. It was like crazy. And I was living at home, and it was just great. But by the time I got out of living at home, I had accrued, like, I can't even tell you. I was probably, when I was all said and done, I was probably over $100,000 in debt. Easily, with the credit cards and movie issues and paying for movies and paying for all this kind of, I was easily 100,000 in debt. And what I used to do is I used to get more credit cards. I would just get credit card. I would have the credit cards pay each other. So I would take cash advances and pay the other credit card, and I would just let them fight it out amongst themselves. It was horrible, dude. And they send you those checks that you could just write down, for cash advances. It's predatory, man. It's honestly predatory. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, the system is setting you up to fail. And I don't blame anyone. I don't blame your 22-year-old self for doing it. It's like anyone could fall into that, and everyone does fall into that. And it's like no one's fault. It's the system is really it is predatory.
Yeah, without question. It is built to make a slave of you. And it's from student debt, it's from credit card debt, it's from car debt, any kind of debt that is out there. It's there to build. They want you to be on the hook for as long as they can keep you on that hook, making that money. That's why if you look at any city, most of the biggest buildings in the city are banks. Look right now. Anyone listening to this, look around your town. And I promise you, 9 out of 10 of the buildings that are in your town, the tallest ones, are banks. There's a reason for that.
Yeah, and they've gamified it with the credit score, right? They've made it a game. It's like, how good are you at borrowing money from us?
Oh my, isn't that insane?
Give you a high score.
Give you a high score for just more debt. It's like, dude, don't even get me started. All right, so... all right, where did we leave off? So you keep your overheads really, really low. So you have around $2,000 worth of expenses every month, which is a fairly low expense rate, considering. And you live in Arizona, right? Oh no, New Mexico.
I live in New Mexico now, but I actually lived in Boulder, Colorado at the time, which is not known for being super cheap.
Yeah.
But I shared a room with my girlfriend, and we were also living with her sister. So.
Hey, do what you got to do. Do what you got to do. Do what you got to do. And that's the thing. If you guys are anyone listening, if you're in debt, man, sometimes you're going to have to do things you don't want to do. It's not about being comfortable. You were comfortable when you were spending the money, whether that be in film school, whether that be on credit cards, whatever it is. That's when you're comfortable. It's uncomfortable to pay things back. Right. So you're going to have to get a little bit uncomfortable.
And it's not if you do it fast, if you set a goal 2 years, then at least you can tell yourself it's not for long. It's just temporary.
Right. Exactly. And when you're young, you can eat ramen noodles every day. I can't.
Sure.
I'm too old for that now. My body can't handle that stuff. But hopefully you wouldn't have to do that. I'm assuming you were eating okay, and you weren't starving.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, I had I would probably spend $50 a week on groceries, but I'm also a vegetarian, so I don't buy meat. And that's actually can be cheaper as long as you avoid Whole Foods, and you can still buy organic.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying people should live unhealthy. I don't think that's good. So I ate I'm a pretty healthy eater, and I ate pretty well on $50 a week. I mean, lentils and making soups, making big pots of. Just make a giant pot of something, and then you just eat that throughout the week, and it's fine. It's it's good. It gets boring for sure, but it's fine.
No, without question. I mean, you're a vegetarian. I'm a vegan, so I get you. You can eat really well when you're a vegetarian or vegan because vegetables aren't as expensive as meats or other things like that. So I'm not saying that everybody in debt needs to turn into a vegetarian or a vegan, but it does help. I'm just throwing it out there. Okay, so your overhead's low. So that's step one. Step two, how are you generating income, and what are some of the tips? Well, first of all, what did you do to generate income coming out of school?
Yeah, so I was working for that nonprofit and just contract work, like, whatever it was, hourly rate. I probably was charging like $15 an hour to start. And then,
Wow, that's rough.
Yeah, $15 an hour. And I was probably working like part-time. And then with them, I just created goodwill.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
I was like, I would really nurture them as a client, and I would do more than I was asked, and I would weigh in on a strategic level. So they felt like I was actually interested in their success. And eventually I bumped my hourly rate from 15 to 20, and then I bumped it up from 20 to 25. And I would work with other clients as well during that time. And as my hourly rate went up with that one client, I would raise that hourly rate with all my clients. And the more I charged, not the less work I got. Like it didn't really change how much work was coming in.
And what were you doing? What were you doing exactly? Like, were you a videographer, editor?
Yeah. So I would do it all. Yeah. I would shoot the video, and then I would edit the video, and then I would publish the video. And I even started to learn some video marketing skills so I could offer that to my clients well. So
you were creating ads or commercials or just video content in general?
Primarily video content. So they were a nonprofit media company. So they would just create a ton of content that they publish online for free. Yeah.
Okay. And then you were basically a one-man band. So you had your own gear.
Band.
You had your $3,000 lighting kit. Thank God you had that. That's solid investment. Solid. And then you had your gear, your camera gear, your own editing system. And then you would just rent yourself out as a production company, basically. And you were also handling their uploading to YouTube, Facebook, all these other places. But then you started adding more skills or more tools in that toolbox, like, hey, maybe I should learn a little bit of this online marketing thing. Hey, maybe I should learn about Facebook ads. Hey, maybe I should learn about this. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I ended up deciding to take a 6-month online digital marketing course. Nice. And I invested $1,000 in that, and it's education, so you can write that off your taxes, right? If you're a freelancer. And so I did that course, and then I started offering like marketing, kind of like not consulting, but just like to my existing clients. I would say like, hey, look, now I know about this marketing side of things. Maybe I have a few ideas here. And that was a big thing. It's like the clients that you have and you've nurtured those relationships with, pitch them on stuff. I always would pitch my clients on video ideas. And I started to pitch them on marketing ideas of like what type of stuff you could do. And I would always pitch video marketing. And it helped that video is like the way to market online, right? So that fit really well. And as I started to offer those things, it was like, it's not like I started to get paid a lot more for my marketing consulting or whatever. I just started to get more video work from clients because I knew that side of the business.
And I preach this constantly, is always keep adding those tools in the toolbox. And you always have to pivot and shift because the marketplace is always changing. So when I started off as an editor. Then I turned into an editor colorist. Then from an editor colorist to a VFX supervisor, then to a post supervisor. And then I handled, I could do DCPs now. I can handle your deliverables for your films. I could also, do it. And I started packaging out larger things. So because I was able to offer so many things at a one-stop shop price, I would work all the time. So I'm assuming that's similar to what you were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's excellent. So then all this money is coming in. So then basically any extra money that comes in, you're just putting it away. You're just paying that debt down.
Yeah. I set a goal for myself of So to do it I actually set a goal for 10 months. So I failed. I did it in 11. And I set a slacker. I think it was, so $3,000 a month would be $30,000 in 10 months. And so that's what I set the goal of. And I set that when that income was not a reality. That was not the reality. Mm-hmm. But it's amazing when you set the goal that you kind of attract that. I mean, it's energetic attraction if you want to believe in that, but it's also just you're literally doing the work to reach that goal. So having a financial goal like that helped me to do more work to make more money.
I think that, and that's something we could touch on really quickly, is people, when you write down the goal, your subconscious starts to kick in and it's like, oh, we're supposed to be making $5,000 a month. So we're going to have to put X amount of more energy into this situation to be able to generate to that goal. And it will reach the goal. If you would have set $10,000 a month, things will start happening to you. And as you start walking down that path, magically, I don't know how it happens, but magically, things just start to present themselves. Opportunities start to present themselves that would have never presented themselves if you would have said, I'm happy making $2,000 a month. Because if you basically, and if we want to get into the whole universe energetic thing, which I have no problem doing because I've seen it too. I'm too old and I've seen too many things. So you put that energy out there, things just start presenting themselves. And a perfect example of that is everything I do with Indie Film Hustle. I literally, I've built an entire company or multiple companies with a microphone sitting in a spare room in my house. That's what? So when you start putting things out there, opportunities present themselves, clients show up, things like that happen. So it definitely seems like that happened to you. So everyone out there, write down the goal that you want and see if you can get to it pretty quickly. How quickly did you get? Because I'm assuming you needed $5,000, give or take, a month for you to be able to live and pay off your debt?
Yeah, that was the number. Yeah.
So how quickly did you get to that?
I think the second month I hit it, and I was really surprised that I did the second month. And it just it felt like luck. I think it probably was some luck, but I was just able to get another client that gave me a bunch of money to do work. And so.
And then every month you're like, oh, that was just September. I'm not sure I'll be able to do that in October. And then October shows up. You're like, well, I did it in October and I did it in November, and it just kind of kept growing and going. And
when I had this goal, I also I realized the need for, and I realized it earlier, but consistent income is one of the hardest things for a freelancer. Mm-hmm. Is how do you get consistent income?
Yeah, no feast or famine situation, because I've been a freelancer most of my life. So it's all oh, I'm really fat. Oh, I'm skinny. I'm fat. I'm skinny.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been in that desperate point when you're you don't know if you're going to make that month's rent. I was there a couple of years ago, and that was super scary. And it made me not want to be there again. It's such a terrible feeling when you're desperate like that. And so I never wanted to be there again. So I started to prioritize clients that would pay me consistently. So even if it was not as much money as I would hope to make, if I knew that I could turn that to consistent income, I would definitely pursue that harder. And I started to ask my clients to pay me more consistently. And it went like this. So hourly rates are the hardest, in my opinion, because you're working a lot and you're getting paid hourly. And then when you want to go back to the client to sell something else, for some reason it's harder when you're doing it hourly. Mm-hmm. For some reason, they're less bought in, you're more disposable. It's easier to disconnect, I think, when you're doing that hourly rate. So then you move it to project base, where you can sell projects, and that's a little more consistent. A project could span 2 months, and so at least you have 2 months income. And then from there, I would bring it to the monthly retainer, and that's what really was the game changer for me. was if you can convince your client to give you a monthly retainer, then suddenly you have that consistent income, and you can start to scale that by bringing on other monthly retainers of other clients. And you start to get the dream situation, which is you're not bound by your time. So I started making more money and working less hours.
Right. So it's like the whole rich dad, poor dad thing, where the 4 quadrants, like you're not reliant on dollars for hours. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. And that's the dream. It's like while you're sleeping, you're making money. And that's, what rich people do with investments in real estate and other things like that. But we're doing it on a different scale and in a different way. But man, I wish I would have thought of that back, when I was your age. That's a really great way of doing it. And if you could get 4 or 5 clients who pay you $1,000 a month retainer, well, your nut is covered and then some after you've paid off. So you're good. And then you could do other projects, and you could and then that can grow and grow. And then eventually you could turn a business into like, I got 20 or 30 of those clients doing that for me. And then now.
Right. And that's an easier way to scale too. Like if you have that monthly retainer and you're not bound to hourly, then you can start hiring other people to jump in. And I think though, for people listening, it's probably, the thing is like, a lot of clients are going to be resistant to the monthly retainer. Mm-hmm. And I had that for years. But that's why I think it's really important to nurture specific clients. Mm-hmm. So build relationships with clients and invest in those good clients. And there's this book called The Pumpkin Plan. Mm-hmm. It's by Mike Michalowicz. Mm-hmm. And it's all about this strategy of building your pumpkin. So it's like taking all the water that you have and putting it into one pumpkin so that pumpkin can grow as big as possible. And that was super helpful for me. And it also helps you to focus your resources. So like if you have a client that needs a lot of interview style video, then you can invest in equipment that will help you serve that client's needs, like a teleprompter. Like I bought a teleprompter to help with doing those type of they would do like scripted but interview style talking to the camera things. And when you serve that one client better, then they refer you to other people like them, and people like them are going to be people that pay consistently, that are good to work with, and that are your ideal client anyways.
That's man, you're dropping some major gold here, man. I mean, I everything you're telling me, I know, and I'm still fascinated by someone your age doing it. But I know a lot of people listening this is like their minds are exploding right now as they're listening to this episode.
And like, this is not me. This is like the Pumpkin Plan. That's whole thing. So I really suggest Mike Michalowicz Pumpkin Plan. It's a good one.
Right. But, I mean, a lot of things I talk about, it's because I've read a book or I've interviewed a guest or something like that knows. As long as the information gets out there, that's all really it matters. Now, how long have you been running your freelance business?
So, yeah, if we don't count like in film school I was doing it, it's been, I graduated when I was 22, so 4 years. 4 years. Now, what are some tips you have on running, other than the ones you just gave us, on running a good freelance business, accounting. Yeah. So, okay.
QuickBooks.
I hate, like,
of course,
I'm not good at I didn't go to film school because I loved math, right? No one does. And I can't deal with that, but I force myself to learn the basics. And you learn the hard lessons when you come tax season and you're like, oh, can I curse? Oh shit. Yeah. I heard someone curse on your podcast earlier. So
it's okay. Okay. Yeah.
And someone and so you have the tax season comes around and you owe $4,000 because taxes are really unfair to freelancers, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
And you owe $4,000, and then the next year you're like, okay, maybe I should save a percentage of my income for taxes. basic stuff like that. And at this point, I've just hired an accountant because freelance accountants that you can find aren't that expensive. And if you can just kind of give them some of that stress and you don't have to deal with it and they can set you up properly, that's like it's been super worth it for me.
Yeah, without question. I think we're creatives. So accounting is generally not our forte. So if you can hire people that can help you with this, and it isn't an expensive thing. It's not that expensive at all. But if you can put that stress on them, let them do what they do, that's a good ROI and an ROT, good return on time and return on investment, to let someone else handle that, where you could be focusing. If you spend 5 hours working on your taxes or on accounting, would those 5 hours made more sense if you would have been working for those 5 hours or nurturing a new client or doing something like, where's the ROI, ROT? Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the hours for sure. And then also just like the amount of money you're going to have to pay because you get screwed because you don't do anything right. It's definitely worth those hundreds of dollars that you'll pay an accountant.
Now, are there some other basic personal finance tips for filmmakers that you have?
I think in terms of filmmaking, I think in film school, you learn to do everything high budget because you have a grip house and you have like access to everything. And so you end up like filling up a truck with like, thousands of pounds of equipment to go shoot your short film, right? And so when you leave film school, and this is why I bought a $3,000 light kit, you think that you're going to need all that of equipment to do projects. And the reality is you can do so much with so much less. And that goes back to just reducing your overhead. And you can do so much by yourself. Like you can do so much just you as a one-man crew these days that you should do that whenever possible. That's super helpful.
Without question. Now, do you also, this goes a little bit deeper into the personal finance. Do you have investments? Do you do investments? Are you doing any sort of investments like stocks, bonds, gold bullion, Bitcoin?
Yeah, I've got some gold bars under my bed.
Nice.
No, I'm not doing any investing. I really follow the Dave Ramsey plan.
Okay.
And he says first of all, pay off all your debt, mm-hmm. and then save up an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months worth of your personal expenses, mm-hmm. or your business expenses. And then you can start investing and doing stuff like that.
So you're still in that second phase right now.
Yeah. So I'm just piling up money in the savings account to, if client work goes down, then I'll have something to fall back on.
A war chest, if you will, which is really good advice. Build up that war chest. I always tell people to do 6 to 12 months. I'm even more conservative. I'm like, get as much in there.
Oh, you're hardcore, man. Yeah.
No, well, because I've got more shrapnel than you do, sir.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I've got a lot more shrapnel than you do, so that's why. Without question, man, you are an inspiration, and I hope a lot of people listening are inspired to start paying off that debt, because you can't be a creative, you can't be a filmmaker making their own projects if if you're spending $500 on a debt, or basically just interest on a debt. You're never going to be able to self-finance a project, or it's just too much stress. And that's when the film industry is enough stress. Would you agree? Just doing what we do is stressful enough, let alone trying to also handle a mortgage payment on top of your head for something that you don't even own anymore, something ethereal like education. It's very, it's one of the reasons why I want to join the show, man. You're an inspiration for hopefully the younger generation. And also, man, I met a lot of older dudes that just are complete messes. So hopefully they're listening too and get their act in shape. And you really are a film entrepreneur, man. You're building a business, you're creating revenue streams. I'm sure you have multiple plans on other things that you're going to be doing to create other revenue streams to really just sleep at night and just have the money roll in, like they said, like they do. That's the dream, and to do your own projects and do things that you want to do. And I hope everyone listening really takes that to heart, man. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. I ask all of my guests, and because I'm going to do a little combination of both film entrepreneur questions and indie film hustle questions. What advice would you give a film entrepreneur starting a project on a financial standpoint?
Yeah. I would say figure out how you can save the most money while keeping quality and paying everyone involved. It's really important to pay everyone involved, in my opinion, because it creates goodwill. And it's really important that you maintain high quality, because you don't want to be the budget option filmmaker.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Like, you don't want to be the budget option filmmaker. You want to produce really good quality stuff. But, prioritize it. And I think people in your audience probably hear this a lot. What gets seen on screen and what doesn't.
What's in that little rectangle? That put it all on the screen. You made a very good point there, and it's something that also a lot of filmmakers fall into this pit. And I lived in this pit for a long time, being the cheapest guy in town. And the cheapest guy in town works a lot, because I would underbid anybody for an edit job, a color job back in the day. I'm talking about 10 years ago. I would do anything. And that's probably one of the reasons why my IMDb is ridiculous. It has 100 credits on it, because I did anything that walked in the door, and I would work with almost any budget. But by doing that, you kill yourself, you burn yourself out, and you're also working with clients that are probably not the highest end, let's just put it roughly. So as a filmmaker and as a production company and freelancer, you don't want to be the cheapest guy in the room, because and tell people why you shouldn't be the budget filmmaker.
Well, you want to work with people that aren't looking to produce crap. You want to work with people that have the same idea of producing quality products or content as you do. And if you went to film school or you're in this business, you're not just trying to make money, that's for sure.
We're not here for the money, guys.
Yeah, right. You want to make quality stuff. And by being cheap, you attract clients that don't value your work. And by being more expensive, you'll attract those better clients.
Very good. Very good. So I always say you don't want to be the cheapest, but you also don't want to be the most expensive. You want to sit there right in the middle somewhere. And that's a nice place to live. Now, what is the biggest lesson you've learned from building your company, building your freelance business?
I think it's that you should think of your freelance business as a business. And I know that probably sounds pretty basic, but I think you got to look at it as a business and separate kind of your passion side of things and still pursue your passion, but don't not do client work that pays really well from a good client just because you get bored with the work. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh, that's not why I went to film school to edit this boring interview, right? But if you think of it as a business and you're really just trying to make yourself money so that you can have freedom to spend more time on creative stuff, then I think that's a better way to look at it.
Without question, man. Trust me, I edited things I wish I'd hadn't. But $1 is $1, and if that's not what you want to do, then you got to figure out a way to get the clients and the projects that you want to do. But until then, treat it like a business, without question. Now, what is the biggest? What did you learn from your biggest business failure? Have you had any business failures?
Oh, for sure, yeah. Let's see. Oh yeah. Well, I made the classic mistake of not backing up footage from a client, and this really just asshole cat that I had just took a swipe at my hard drive and broke it, and I hadn't backed it up, and I lost a week worth of one of my good clients' work.
Oh, that's not a good conversation to have.
Yeah.
That phone call must have sucked.
Like there's there's hardly anything worse that is a shitty phone call. Yes.
So back everything up is basically what you're saying. Got it. Back everything up. Now, can you tell me what is the lesson that has taken you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
Just back to accounting, like doing the numbers and like making sure you save for taxes. Mm-hmm. Like taxes is just such a big deal, and it took me so long to like figure that out. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And then what was the biggest fear you had to overcome to just do this, to be a filmmaker, to be, to run a freelance business? What's that? There had to have been something that you just had to overcome to do that, because there's a lot of people who talk about doing what you're doing. And I'm sure you even probably went to school with some of them who aren't doing it. So what did you have to overcome to get to this place?
I think you got to believe that you are young and you are working towards something. And if you're not doing that right now, it doesn't mean that you should just stop and do something else entirely. Keep doing the video work that pays well and keep investing in that so that you can, and know that you're working towards something.
Man, I was an editor for 6-7 years before I started directing. And directing was always the key. It was always the key. In a time where it wasn't as easy to direct as it is now, there was no technology to just kind of go out and do it cheap. So you got to look at the long game, without question. And 3 of your favorite films of all time, sir.
Oh, yeah. I was actually, I meant to think about this question before I came on, because I know you always ask it. And I was like, that is the toughest question. Okay, my pretentious choice is Amadeus. Love Amadeus.
It's a great movie.
I also love Inception. I really like Inception.
Great movie.
And my third one is American Beauty. I was forced to watch that movie like 6 times in film school in a row. A teacher had us do that. And instead of hating it, I really learned to love that movie.
It is. Well, you either have one or two choices if you sit there to watch it 6 times in a row.
Yeah.
Excellent, man. Listen, man, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you being so honest and forthcoming about your journey to battle the demon, the nether beast of film school student debt. And I really hope you inspire some people out there. That is my hope for this episode, that you inspire other people out there to get rid of that debt, man, so they can go on and live their life and follow that dream. So thank you again, brother, so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Alex. Really appreciate it.
I really hope that you take everything that Haib and I said in this episode to heart. I hope you're inspired now to take control of your finances, to take control of that debt, that student debt, or any credit card debt, whatever that debt is, and to start paying it off right now. And I know a lot of you out there are saying, Alex, I don't have a job. I can barely, do what I'm doing right now. Listen, guys, I understand that, but you know who doesn't care? The banks. Life. They don't care. I was there. I was literally 3 days away from signing bankruptcy paperwork until I got a call and got a job, one freelance job. And that one freelance job left to another freelance job where I got another one and another one until I was finally able to get out of it. If you really are trying to do it, the universe will help you figure out how to do it. But you've got to make the effort. Drop your overhead. Drop your monthly expenses. Move in with your parents if you have to. Move in with a roommate or 2 or 3 roommates. Be uncomfortable. You're going to have to get uncomfortable to get out of this. You were like I said earlier, you were very comfortable spending the money, whether that was on education or that was on many other things that are credit cards that we weren't supposed to, like I did when I was younger. But you have to get uncomfortable. And that place is where you need to be able to start paying this stuff off very, very quickly and get it done as quickly as possible. And by the way, guys, it's not forever. It might be a year, it might be 2 years. You're not going to have to live like this for the rest of your life, but you have to tighten that belt and get out of this debt. It is an albatross around your neck. It is a chain with just weights around your neck, and it's not going to let you go anywhere, not only in this business, but in life. It's going to be really difficult for you to get out of this. So every effort, every piece of energy that you have in you should be focused on getting rid of this debt, your student loan debt. And if you got massive credit card bills, those too. This should be your focus. The longer you wait to get this under control, the bigger this dragon will become. Trust me, I was in like I said in the episode, over $100,000 in debt and almost went bankrupt because of my lack of knowledge in this space. It's not brain surgery. Like he says, and Dave Ramsey says, it's 20% education and 80% habits. So you've got to build out some new habits. And there's plenty of education out there. I'll put links to a few courses, a few books that I recommend that can help you on your journey. And you can go to the show notes at indiefilmhustle.com/338. And if you haven't already, please head over to filmmakingpodcast.com and leave a good review for the show. Subscribe and leave a good review. It really helps us out a lot. It's not hard. Just go on your app, on your smartphone, on your iPhone, on your Samsung, whatever it is, whatever app you're listening to Indie Film Hustle on, please just subscribe there and leave a good review. It helps the show out a lot. Again, I really do hope you guys take this episode to heart. I wanted to get this out there as soon as possible. And if you want, go to the show notes where you will be able to read the entire article that Habib was able to write and breaks down everything he did to be able to pay off his $30,000 student loan in 11 months. So thanks again for listening, guys. As always, keep that hustle going, keep that dream alive, and pay down your debt, please. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.